Hey everyone, welcome to cooking lesson number 2. I hope that you've been working on your first habit with giving thanks each time that you go to eat. So you take a moment and just remember that food was designed to nourish your body. I hope that you enjoyed Mise en Place and that you've started to get your feet a bit wet in the kitchen with looking at recipes, learning how to be well prepared to start cooking in the kitchen. So today's lesson is about not only the most important piece of equipment that you'll have in your kitchen, but also some basic technique, which we will, when we move through the cooking lessons, revisit this and spend a bit more time with it. But for today's purpose, we're going to talk about having good quality knives in your arsenal. Knives are so important to cooking. If you ever doubt that, just watch any professional cooking show, especially competitive ones. The chef always does what? He always shows up with one piece of equipment that belongs to him and doesn't use what's there at the cooking studio. And that's his set of knives. Why is that? There's a couple reasons. But the most important reason to remember is that a good quality, sharp knife that becomes an extension of your hand keeps you safe in the kitchen. People get injured by dull knives. They get injured by cheap knives. If you have a good quality knife that again becomes an extension of your hand, is a perfectly sharp blade, then you are much less likely to slip and have an accident in the kitchen. The second reason, and I think more for our purposes than a professional chef, because I'm certainly not one, is ease of preparation. I will tell you the number one reason that a lot of people do not cook is because they don't have a sous chef. They don't have somebody that's chopping, prepping, mincing, dicing all of their vegetables, and it just seems too time consuming. A good quality knife will make easy work of taking care of any vegetables. You want to get good at this. I do understand that grocery stores now sell pre-chopped, pre-diced, pre-sliced everything, and if that's within your economic means and it's the only way that you'll cook, then please by all means do what's best and what will work best for you. But just remember, there's nutrient density loss in those vegetables that have been sitting there pre-chopped. There's not as much shelf life, so you're more likely to be throwing them out and having waste on the back end. And I promise you, if you get a good quality knife, then the slicing, chopping, and dicing maybe one day won't only not feel like a chore, but it'll also be a nice transition into easing you into that kind of meditative space that cooking can become. So the first knife. There are 3 knives that I would love for you to get, but if you can only get one good quality knife, and they're pricey, go ahead and get what's known as a chef's knife. A chef's knife comes in 8 to 10 inches. There are many details about all the things that you need to look for when purchasing a good quality knife. But a chef's knife is going to do every job that you need to do in the kitchen, short of slicing a bagel. So make sure that you go in. The most important thing is ask the people, can I handle the knife? Can I hold the knife? How does it feel in my hand? You can see that I need a shorter chef's knife. A 10-inch chef's knife is too much knife for me. I can't handle it as effectively as I can handle a shorter one. The second knife for slicing bread is a serrated knife, a serrated bread knife. Go ahead, if you slice bagels, bread, also tomatoes, a serrated knife is really an excellent tool to have on hand. And then if you're only going to get 3, my third knife would be a paring knife. Again, these come in different lengths, just like a chef's knife. This is the shortest of all the paring knives because I can handle it much more easily. So if you have a smaller hand, you're more petite in nature, go for the smaller sizes. But again, you don't know until you handle the knife. So go to the store, be confident, tell them that you want to hold the knife. Most high-end quality kitchen stores will not only let you handle the knife, but they'll probably have some things for you to give it a test drive on, much like a car, because they are an investment. The good thing about a knife is I've had the knives that you're looking at here since before I got married. So I've had all of these knives for over 2 decades, and they've all held up beautifully. And an occasional sharpening. You can either sharpen at home with a sharpening stone, or many places in town will just sharpen your knives easily. And I would never sharpen a serrated knife. I would take that out. That's above my pay grade. I don't know how to do that. So let's get to our cuts. What is the importance of cutting vegetables? First, you want to have different cuts because they function differently in your food dishes. The larger the cut, the more surface area versus the smaller the cut. It works with the way flavor infuses in your dish. So you want to make sure that when you read the recipe that a slice is your most basic cut. A chop is usually if you're not going to see it visually or if you're going to puree it just to distribute the flavor evenly in the dish, and it's not as important if it's uniform. A dice, which is just a uniform chopping method, whether it's a large dice just beneath a chop all the way to a fine dice just above a mince. And then mincing, where you really want to distribute that flavor throughout the meal, and you don't want a single person that bites into it to actually bite into the food itself. They just taste the flavor. So as an example for that, I would use garlic and herbs. They're what you're most likely going to mince. No one wants to bite into a dish to a slice of garlic, cooked or not cooked. So you just want that garlic flavor without actually having to find garlic in your food, and that's where a mince comes in. So let's start with an onion. I'm going to take us through all the cuts except for a mince with this onion. And again, when we grip the knife, first, I'm going to go over all the handling to keep you safe. You want to make sure, don't hold the knife back here on the handle. You want your hand on the blade itself because, again, it's an extension of your hand. I oftentimes take my pointer finger and actually lay it on either the side or the top of the knife to really have control over that blade, to know where it is at all times. Second, your other hand. They call it a claw grip. I'm going to tell you guys right now, I'm not great at the claw grip. I have to think through it all the time. I tend to get sloppy, but don't get nervous. I won't do anything dangerous on camera. But the claw grip is you take those fingers and just like a claw, you curl them back to keep those digits out of the way of the very sharp knife. The third tip, and I do this with my kids because it allows them to start chopping and slicing and dicing at an earlier age, is you need a stable surface. So if you're cutting an onion or something round, that's not very stable. So if I was to try to slice and dice this is now in motion, more likely for something to slip. Cut off a small section of it, and what do I create? A nice, flat, stable surface for me to begin cutting. And then I'm just going to make sure that I prep my onion to get it prepared to start slicing, the first of our 3 cuts that I'm going to go over. Okay, so the first cut that we're going to do is a simple slice. The important thing again is always control of that very sharp knife to keep everybody safe. So I've got my stable surface, I've got my knife held with that extension, I've got my claw grip to keep those digits out of the way. So I always tell my kids, I'm going to tell you, how do you keep a knife safe for a slice? Keep that knife tip down, not lifting the blade or the knife up off the cutting surface. You just push it forward, slide it back, push it forward, slide it back, push it forward, and slide it back. So then you get these uniform slices. The blade never left the surface, so your fingers and your hands were safer, so you're not coming down on the food where it could slip. So again, with a slice, you always want that knife tip down, and then you want to draw it back towards you, push down, slide it forward. So that's slice. So our next cut after the slice is just a rough chop. When would you use a rough chop? A rough chop is, you're not going to see the food and it doesn't need to be bite-sized. It just needs to infuse a lot of flavor into the dish. So you can think oftentimes like a braise. Something's really going to cook long and slow. That flavor infuses because of all of that surface area, and the food itself becomes soft within the dish, and probably more than likely is either pureed or strained out at the end. So in a braising liquid, typically we would push the liquid through a strainer and then we would discard all the onion that was infusing that flavor. So chops are super easy. You don't have to be real thoughtful about it. So I would just take the onion and I kind of do a partial 3/4 cut, right? Turn, and then again, just like a slice, you want to bring your knife rocking back and forth, keeping that blade down, controlling your knife with your hand to get those nice big chunks that you can just throw in a soup, a stock, or a braising liquid and then not have to worry about anybody having to chew or see those. So now we're on to our third cut, which is a dice. And a dice is going to be in your recipes in all different ways. They're going to say a large dice all the way to a fine dice. What's most important for you to remember as a new cook in the kitchen is that you want uniform pieces. Even if you get the size slightly wrong, it's more important that they're uniform, because you're going to use a dice where you're going to see the vegetables and you actually need them to all cook evenly. So think if you're roasting vegetables, if you're using them as pasta, as an add-in, as a side vegetable, they won't cook at the same amount of time if you have one piece that's substantially smaller than the other. So you'll end up with a burned piece of vegetable, and then you'll end up with a piece of vegetable that's not cooked at all. So with a dice, I just start kind of with that chop the same way, you know, and then I keep that knife blade down. I draw back, trying to keep those pieces together so that when I turn my knife, I can come back across and get a dice. This is about a medium dice. Okay, so now we're going to move to the finest cut of all of them, and that's mincing. Like I said in the beginning, mincing is reserved for those things that you don't want anybody to necessarily bite into or notice is in the dish itself. You just want that flavor infused throughout. So more likely than not, your mincing is going to be a very strongly flavored things rather than things that you want to eat yourself. Garlic, herbs, ginger, things like that. So today I'm going to mince some parsley. I'm not doing garlic actually for a specific reason. I rarely mince garlic. I use a microplane grater, which we'll see in a later cooking lesson, but not today. So you get this beautiful head of parsley, and you have all of these stems, which you don't want. So take your knife at an angle, get that claw, and then you kind of give the parsley a haircut. So then you can take the stems, discard those, and then you have all the parts of the parsley that you actually want to eat. Hope that helps. Alex asked me that parsley was intimidating. So one of the things with herbs is you kind of want to package it up. I always start more with a slice. Again, claw, keeping that knife tip down, keeping those herbs bunched up, and getting them just sort of separated into a smaller, more manageable group. Then you want to take those herbs again. You want to just make sure that they're all bundled up. And then here's where mincing changes. You still want to hold the knife as an extension of your hand, but you want to take your claw hand, and instead of having a claw, because there's no reason to hold these herbs together, nor will you be able to, you want that hand to come safely up on top of your blade. This is why your blade is curved, so that you can get this rocking motion of just going back and forth across the herbs, using the knife to keep those herbs bundled up nice and tight, and you just keep going until you get as fine a mince as your recipe calls for. And again, if it says mince, they just mean to run it through once or twice. If it says a fine mince, then you really want to kind of work the herb or the aromatic fairly sufficiently until you get really nice fine pieces that are going to diffuse that parsley flavor throughout your dish without anybody getting parsley stuck in their teeth or an herb stuck in their teeth. So that's cooking lesson number 2. Basic knife skills, how to shop for and purchase a good quality knife. Go to your textbook or go to your online materials, print out that cooking lesson, take it with you to the store, because it will tell you everything about the weight, the handle construction, the type of materials that you want your knife to be made of, so that you can confidently go in and come out with the best quality knife that you can go ahead and afford. Hope you enjoyed this cooking lesson. Next week we're going to do, I'm not going to say my favorite cooking lesson, probably my favorite cooking lesson in Q1, because I'm obsessed with cast iron. So I will teach you all the reasons why cast iron should become a part of your life if it isn't already. See you next week.